So, good evening to all of you. Today would be our second session. So, we'll start with the prayer. Gently close your eyes. Bring your attention to your heart. Feel the presence of your master in your heart and also all masters. Let us pray to the Almighty for good health and happiness of our dear master. And also pray to our master that this session goes as per his desire.
Good baby.
That's it. Moving on, as Raghu brother mentioned, that we will today go through a letter from Lalaji to the Abhyasis. Is anybody volunteering to sort of go through this letter?
ಇವತ್ತು Friday.
It is too small. Go ahead, Nirmala sister.
Complete Works of Lalaji, Volume 3, Letters Written to Abhyasis. Dear brother, may God bless you with progress in every aspect of spirituality and worldly life. I am fine. Can they mute? It's kind of. Is it Manjula sister? Can you please mute? The health of Jagmohan's wife is now becoming very bad. She is under treatment at Farrukhabad. May God shower his grace. I have received many letters from Babu Dilaram Sahib. To what extent should I be grateful for the sympathy expressed and the spirit of love? People of this nature are rare, and there are due and are there due to the grace and kindness of God. All human beings are born to be compassionate, and they naturally help each other knowingly or unknowingly. But he gets some special work done by such special people who have been ordained for it. Only they can do this work. These are the special symptoms of love. God is absolute love, absolute knowledge, and absolute bliss. But if in knowledge and bliss there is an open expression of love, this special blessing is among the many blessings of His. It is the very soul of feeling. We exist through feeling, and through feeling only one day we will merge in the original source. And when the soul of feeling is love, then its characteristic and very special quality is the vivid light of God, which is present in an awakened person. When does it sleep deeply? This soul sleeps in trees, in flowers, in stones, in animals, and in stars. This very soul is sleeping in everything except human beings. Now, in human beings, the truly awakened soul is the one that works for others without any assistance, without any expectations, and without the feeling of selfishness. The idea of helping is always there latently in the intent. Can there be any better aspect of an unveiled soul than this? Remember God. Those who die for others will become alive. Those who live for themselves are no better than animals. I will write about the remaining conditions in the next letter. Blessings to all. Ramchandra, 11th February 1926.
Thank you, Sister Nirmala. Yeah. So the reason I picked this letter was, a couple of things that came to my mind since this subject that we are discussing is on knowledge. And here Lalaji basically describes God as absolute knowledge also. I think that was something sort of struck my mind. I thought of sort of insert this particular letter here. The second thing that also sort of encouraged me to put this letter here was that that there's the soul of feeling. Basically, we exist through feeling, and through feeling only one day we merge in the original source. And when the soul of feeling is love, then there's one point we sort of also caught my mind, where the soul of feeling is love. I think there's something through our practice and through the work that we do. I think if we are able to sort of get to the sort of core of it and try to implement in our sadhana as well as into day-to-day life, it could be a very useful thing. So this is one point that I thought that caught my eye, and if anyone else would like to add to it, I think I would. Anybody would like to add, you can put that in the chat box. Shrikant brother, yeah, go ahead.
Here, the last two paragraphs, it is, it's a great learning here. As we continue our abhyas, we facilitate our evolution, and it is natural for us to get involved in serving spiritual or any service. So here it says that it should be, it's a natural progression for a abhyasi. Like as he grows, it is for service. So that is one learning, the last two paragraphs.
Give the Shrikant. Anybody else? Okay, Jitesh brother, you can unmute yourself and.
Yeah, I think you covered it, but I think the feelings part is something that we were discussing in the last session as well, right?
Right.
That's the only thing that is kind of the guide towards the all. like points. So like this particular message is like a direct correlation with that particular discussion. So yeah.
True. True. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Brother Anand, you can go ahead. Yeah.
I think one thing I found is it's talking about initially I thought read it as, feeling is part of the soul, but it's actually saying the love is the very soul of feeling. So,
Yeah.
so underlying or underpinning every feeling, if there is love attached, and it says, that's a special quality. Yeah.
That's right. That, again, I agree with you.
Yeah.
As you said, it's the underpinning of all our feelings. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I was discussing even I was discussing with somebody is even hate, is also a feeling, right? Is there
Yeah.
also love underpinning it, right?
Yeah.
can lead to many things, right? So
Yeah. Maybe if it is selfless, I don't know if there is anything called a selfless hate. I don't know.
okay.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, brother. Thank you. Yeah.
Brother,
Sister Rima, go ahead.
Good evening, brother.
Good evening. Yeah.
Brother, in the second page, first para or the second para, this I just wanted to understand when Lalaji says, when does it sleep deeply? The soul sleeps in trees, in flowers, in stones, in animals, and in stars. The very soul is sleeping in everything except human being. So, brother, out here, is it connoting little bit to the consciousness? uh, of anything, or how is it? Because to my understanding, when one time Daji explained that the stone also have a consciousness, flower also have a consciousness, and human beings also have a consciousness, but it's more evolved in comparison to plants or stones.
Yeah, true. Yeah, I think where I understand it, sister, is that in stone, as you say, it's more solidified. In plants, it's slightly better than compared to the stones. In animals, it's slightly better. Whereas in human beings, I think it's reasonably evolved rather, and which basically will help us to sort of understand not only the surrounding us but also us also in a much deeper way. So I think that's the understanding I get from this particular paragraphs. Sister. So we'll just go have one more before we go to the subject proper. Murthy, go ahead.
Brother, I just observed, see, this letter is dated 11th Feb 1926. He had, Babuji had met Lalaji a few years back in 1922, and Lalaji was there till 1931. So, since he was a special personality, he's already started doing his work, taking care of the Abhyasis, and he's clearly mentioned soul, the feeling is love in its subtle expression, and that is what is clearly laid out here. And the other soul of trees, flowers, and all is made it abundantly clear that they are sleeping, whereas in human beings, it gives you indication in the form of intuition. I think that is what is trying to help say, and also the idea of helping is always there in the latently in the intent. So that is what is made it very clear.
Thank you, brother. I think Raghu brother has raised his hand, so I think then we'll make an exception here. And Raghu brother, go ahead.
I just wanted to add 2 3 points. Since it was an interesting letter, I thought I'll just add 2 3 points from other books as well. It'll be useful. See, in the first page of the letter that you have displayed here, you have said that God is absolute love, knowledge, and bliss. And since soul is nothing but a part of God, the soul also has love, knowledge, and bliss. Now, when we say that the soul is awakened, if you look at the second page, it says awakened person. In the first paragraph, in the bold letters, the last word, awakened person. Now, who is an awakened person? How do you recognize them? An awakened person is one who can actually express those qualities of God fully. So, if there is a fuller expression of love, fuller expression of knowledge, fuller expression of bliss, you can recognize that person as being awakened. That's one of the signs. In the second paragraph on the second page, when Lalaji talks about the soul being sleepy, what does it mean? It just means that the fuller expression of the soul in terms of love, bliss, and the knowledge is not possible in that particular life form. That's what he means. It's not possible. The very life form that it has taken limits the expression of the characters of the soul in the form of love, knowledge, and bliss. So it is limited. In that context, he says that the soul is sleeping in those living beings. And then if you just go through the same paragraph further, he says, in a human being who is truly awakened, what are the signs? The signs are that they work for others. How do they work for others? They work for others without any assistance, without any expectation, and without any feeling of selfishness. So these are the three signs. So the earlier sign of an awakened person was that they have a fuller expression of knowledge, bliss, and love. Now, even when those things are being exhibited or being there as a manifestation, it should be aligned with no expectation, no selfishness, and an intent to help others without any assistance. So these are the three things that you are looking for. The first three things align with the next three things. That will give you a very clear-cut sign of how to recognize an awakened person. Now, remember, in the next one, the last paragraph, can there be any better aspect of an unveiled sword than this? So essentially, he's prodding people to die by working for others rather than live like animals. So this is in terms of some of the subtleties that are there in this letter. In this context, I just wanted to mention one or two things in addition to what is there in the letter. So I'm reading from 1944 Whispers, Volume 1. So this book. So I just want to read two sentences. Lalaji writes about Babuji. Babuji, on the other hand, always tried to develop his intelligence. He remained fond of that alone. Now, when Lalaji writes about Babuji's fondness for intelligence, here again we are talking about knowledge. Obviously, intelligence is one aspect which actually helps us gaining better knowledge. What kind of intelligence are we talking about? Are we talking about the intelligence at the level of the mind? No. We are talking about the intelligence of the heart. Babuji was very sensitive to the feelings in the heart. That is the intelligence that Lalaji is actually talking about. There are three intelligence that every human being has. One, intelligence at the level of the mind. Second one, intelligence at the level of the heart. And the third one, intelligence at the level of the gut. Since there are three brains, there are three intelligence as well. Now, the mental related intelligence is something that we do with the aspect of thinking and imagining, concising, elaborating, analyzing, all these kinds of things. Now, there are a lot of mental faculties involved in that particular intelligence. When you come to the heart, it is fairly straightforward. It just gives you an indication of the feeling. That's all it is, the heart. And the third one is the intelligence of the gut. Now, the intelligence of gut is something like very, very simple question it answers. What does it answer? It asks, is this intake of this particular material or this particular item is going to be good for the overall functioning of the system? That's the only thing that the gut actually answers. Should I take this or not take this? Should I take it? If I'm going to take it, in what quantity I'm going to take it, so that the overall functioning of the system is enhanced rather than curtailed. Is it going to be evolutionary in nature? That is the kind of feeling that the gut actually gives you. Normally, we are not sensitive to the feelings of the gut. So we just basically go on dumping whatever we can catch hold of. And then we actually suffer the consequences of that. So the intelligence of the gut, then the intelligence of the heart. Now look at what happens in the heart. When people come for meditation in heartfulness, the heart of that person is overpowered by the functioning of the mind. This is the state that most people come in. Now, obviously, they are not sensitive towards the feelings of the heart. They are only sensitive to the functioning of the mind. Now, as you grow in spirituality, when you start paying attention to the heart, you become sensitive to feelings. Now, if you remember, we had spoken in the past about the relationship between emotions and feelings. Heart is an organ of feeling, mind is an organ of emotion. Now, what is the difference between the two? I had mentioned one time in the past that in psychiatry, we use the term the mood disorder or emotional disorder. We do not use the term feeling disorder. Okay. Now, what is the difference between the feeling and emotion? The feeling is the same for everyone. However, if you were to add energy and ego to the feeling, it gets converted into emotions. In other words, we had spoken about it. Emotion is a grosser form of feelings. But how does it become grosser? You add energy to it, you add ego to it. When the individuality or the ego and energy is added to the feeling, it gets converted into an emotion which is then perceived or felt at the level of the mind. Now, what happens when you actually take sittings? As we take sittings regularly, we clean the heart. When the heart is cleaned to a certain extent, some of the ego actually is now refined. So, to that extent, we stop adding ego to the feeling. Likewise, when the cleaning is done in the heart region, some of the unnecessary emotional energy that we hold or the energy that we hold in the heart, in the subconscious mind, is also kind of released. So no longer we are actually adding energy to the feeling. To just give a very simple example, suppose you go to a function and then they have cooked various items and you taste a particular item. Now, when you say that it looks like this particular item is a bit more sweet or it's a bit more spicy. Now that is general feeling, it's just a general comment about a feeling. You just had a bit of it in your mouth and then you just tasted it and then you made a comment. Huh. It appears as if this item is a bit more salty or spicy. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. It's just a feeling. It's a natural thing. Now, anybody who tastes it will have some feeling or the other. However, suppose you actually have the same experience and you say, I feel that this particular item is too spicy and it's not going to be good for anybody to have this. Now, can you see that same feeling has now been converted into an emotion? You are actually putting energy into it, you are putting ego into it, and then you are actually not only putting ego to the extent that you are expressing your opinion, but you're also saying that it's not going to be good for others also. So in that way, we actually convert the feeling into emotion. When we are able to communicate at the level of the feeling to the extent that we do not form much samskaras. Okay. So what is Viveka? Viveka is when the mind's intelligence aligns with the intelligence of the heart and the intelligence of the gut. All the three put together, we call it as Viveka. Viveka is all the different types of intelligence coming together in one platform or as one. That is Viveka. So the mind's intelligence becomes aligned with the intelligence of the heart and the intelligence of the gut. When that happens, how to develop that? Might be a very simple question that everyone might have. How to develop it? It's very simple. Keep the goal in front of you. Anything that you do, anything that you think, anything that you eat should be looked at from the perspective of the goal only. Is it something that's going to help me go towards the goal faster? So if I eat a particular food, say it could be a non-veg, it could be an egg, it could be some medications, is it something that's going to actually help me go towards the goal faster, or is it going to mar my journey towards the goal? So if we have this perspective at the physical level, mental level, and at the spiritual level, in alignment with the goal, that is what we call as viveka. When we do develop viveka or discriminative or discerning intelligence, everything that we do at all levels of our existence is now in tune with the goal. So these are the few points I just wanted to share with you based on whatever we picked up from other books also. So I would request brother to continue with the rest of the session.
Thank you, brother.
Anant and R.N. Murthy, you've been trying to raise your hands. R.N. Murthy raised twice and then
I can keep the question for later, but it is something to do with the gut based on what you said. Often gut is also sort of related to intuitive intelligence, right? People talk about it loosely like that, but your explanation was a little bit different. So I was just...
We'll speak about it later on.
Yeah, sure.
Good that you have made your observation. We'll speak about it later on. Okay? No problem.
Let's come to today's session. So we will talk about Jnana according to Babuji. We'll also talk about briefly about what in other religions and scriptures have said. And then we will talk about some of the technicalities of chakras, koshas, and knots and elements. So this will be the overall structure of today's discussion. Okay. So Jnana, this is I take this is from the footnote of the first chapter that I have taken, and where Babuji defines what Jnana is. So Jnana, the word is the ordinary in the ordinary sense means knowledge, which may be of different kinds: physical, mental, material, or spiritual. In the spiritual sense, the term is applied so vaguely that often it becomes very difficult to understand its true significance. The range it covers extends from a baser level of common understanding to a higher level of inner enlightenment. So in this particular paragraph, I think I just put a photograph next to it, right, where we start where we as human beings started to develop tools of things that are needed for our needs. So we generally call them as jnana. Whereas in the spiritual world, I think yes, I think what Babuji is mentioning, we are not yet there. I think the whole book, I think what Babuji is trying to write here is trying to bring about some sort of clarity in the field of spirituality. So I think that is what jnana is what Babuji is trying to say in a spiritual sort of a field. In the following paragraph, says the result of this is what Babuji is explaining here. This gives rise to a lot of confusion and misunderstanding. A man who has learned a few scriptures, another who can argue and assert things on the basis of his knowledge, still another who recites every moment said phrases like Aham Brahmasmi, I am Brahma, etc., claims to be a jnani or the enlightened and is accepted as such by the masses, irrespective of his real state. I think this is where we stand as far as our understanding of knowledge in spirituality is what Babuji is trying to say here. Again, it is basically talking about all bookish knowledge. So here basically how Babuji goes in a bit deeper in this following paragraph. Jnana is the real sense refers to the inner condition of the mind which an Abhyasi develops during the course of his pursuit, while passing through different spiritual states at different knots and granthis or granthis. So we'll talk about granthis in the future slides or sessions. So here, I think what Babuji is mentioning is jnana as is sense as an inner condition of the mind. I think he's very, very clear about that. I think yesterday Raghu brother had also given us an assignment, to go through Lalaji's book on knowledge. I think probably others also probably have gone through this and sort of a follow-up on what Lalaji is sort of telling us there. So as a final note here, jnana is in fact a realization of conditions prevailing at each knot. Now, since the knots are innumerable, the knowledge gained is also different according to the level of approach of the Abhyasi. See, this is, I think, very common that we observe in the reading of our books. Like many times when we have read, say, Reality at Dawn, say 15 years ago, and we read it now, we seem to see that the book is very different. I think this, something sort of a similar sort of an experience, I think, that we sort of observe also. So I think this also makes, this sentence also makes from our experience, this is also what we see. So this is from the footnote that I have taken. Now going to the chapter proper, okay, there's one more sentence that is there, I'm sorry about that. That is almost meaningless to call one a jnani without defining his level of approach or the limit of knowledge realized by him. This is the main point which is meant to be elucidated to the readers through the content of this little book. So this is the purpose for which he has written this book, is what Babuji is sort of letting us know. So knowledge jnana, this is basically the start of the chapter. So in this paragraph, he's talking about creation. So when the time of creation came, preparations commenced, currents flowed out, vibrations intensified, formation of knots or granthi started, momentum gathered, churning process set in, and actions and reactions began and continued till objects began to assume individual forms. The process of creation thus came into full swing. Animate and inanimate objects began to come into existence in course of time. All the objects came into light and the universe was formed. Following on the previous paragraph, when the time of creation came, preparations commenced, currents flowed, vibrations intensified, formation of knots started, momentum gathered, churning process in, and actions and reactions began and continued till objects began to assume individual forms. The process of creation thus came into full swing. Animate and inanimate objects began to come into existence. In course of time, all the objects came in light and the universe was formed. So this is where we stand as of now. This whole sort of in a nutshell as to where we are as of today. Okay. This is a little bit of a bigger, sort of a larger paragraph. I'll try to read as slowly as possible. But now, having acquainted with momentum and undergone its pleasing effect to a great extent, the thought of search of peace began to creep up in our mind by itself. When we started the search, our attention was transfixed upon calmness, which we understood to be somewhat more pleasant. But so far, we knew not what it actually was, nor had we any taste of it. Experience promoted our understanding, and we began to feel that it is undoubtedly something worth achieving, though we have not experienced it as yet. This is what may be presumed as the preliminary level of jnana or knowledge. People may, however, call this understanding as true knowledge, but actually it amounts only to a recognition there is a state known as peace or tranquility. This is generally the level of a common man where he gets enlisted as a jnani merely for the reason of knowing so much. That is the only significance of jnana in the eyes of the common man. I think in this paragraph, as you would probably observe, that our as the creation started to progress, I think we sort of enjoyed quite a bit. We had a sort of pleasantries that came up in the way, and somewhere there was an inflection point that happened where the mind started to feel that he wanted to have some sort of a peace of mind. I think that was a sort of a inflection point, and then he wanted to and then he somehow got an idea of calmness, and he thought achieving calmness was something which is worth having, and that's how the human being started to trying to learn as to how to get that calmness as such. So here, what in the later paragraph, what Babuji is trying to mention is that so the understanding that a human being had, that he need to have this sort of peace or tranquility or calmness as such, was the starting point of jnana, and that was his level as such. And if you look at commoners here, or human being as of today, so most of us really want to have that peace or something that in our life with a pleasant living as such. So that seems to be the goal of most of us, most of us as such. So this is where I think where Babaji is talking about jnana. Moving on to the next slide. Yeah. How this came, how this condition where we are looking at only calmness or having to gain something in life is very most important. How this has sort of arrived at is what Babaji is trying to sort of explain in this paragraph. I'll read this now. How this came about is not difficult to understand. The connecting link between the animate and the inanimate is its root. A poison and its antidote are mostly found adjacent to each other. When we are in a state of inanimation, it is but natural to think of animation, because it is at the base of the inanimate, and both states are interrelated. Now, the first thought that flashed across the mind was to proceed towards animation, which constitute our very first step towards growth. It is a matter of fact that our vision fails to apprehend a thing situated at the very high or at a very low level. But since man occupies the middle position, the middle state or samavastha came to his lot. What can that middle point in us be? It is only the heart, and it is at this point that the connecting link between the animate and the inanimate is most clearly felt. This is the reason why meditation on heart is very useful. I think in this particular paragraph, I think sort of establishes to why human beings need to meditate, and that's the only place where we can sort of be able to understand ourselves and the rest of the world. Now, moving on to the next paragraph. Now either we ourselves thought of it or the environment pushed us that way. Anyhow, we lean towards animate consciousness. But so long as the sense of consciousness lingers, the idea of worldliness exists, and this is the pseudo-seers have called as jnana or knowledge. Okay. So this is this is a short sort of a chapter that Babuji has written on Jnana. So going forward, since we are going to talk about consciousness, I thought I'll talk about briefly as to what about what other religions and our experiences have been in religion, briefly. Though I'm not an expert on that, it is just for our understanding that I've put all this material here, and we probably can go deeper, based on our own interest. As such, so yeah. So this stage of consciousness I put in Islam and Christianity. And if you look at it, right, I think, in many of our literature also, Babuji uses many of these, I think, Urdu or Farsi words, which could be our understanding also, which we can sort of connect to. So if you look at the common theme, as you see, the human being sort of, will be evolving at different levels, starting from a natural carnal man who is generally ego-driven, not really unaware of God or higher things in creation or in life, with certain amount of maybe education or some sort of advice, moves to a slightly higher level, where he's able to sort of look at himself, repent for things that have not gone on well, and which would in turn help him to increase his conscience. And and as he sees the benefit of it, he tries to go further, and then he starts looking at inner peace as such, which makes him feel better. And in Bible it's basically called the peace in Christ. And going further, as he starts getting more encouraged to go further in his evolution of consciousness, here he starts looking at a divine alignment, like the Christians would like to follow Jesus, or they are in Islam Muhammad. They would like to align with whatever he did and whatever he said and whatever he experienced, and that's how they start to develop. And finally, like in Sahaj Marg also, they also look at ultimate unity with the divine, and they call it as union with God, and that is Fana or Baka is what they sort of talk about. So this is in brief about what the different state of human consciousness in Islam and Christianity. And if you go to Buddhism, this chart is laid out in a slightly different manner. So they basically have got start looking at the stages. They typically have around 14 stages in Jainism, and 4 stages of enlightenment, 4 stages in Buddhism and 14 in Jainism. There they look at gradual evolution of consciousness, very much similar to what we would probably see. And if we look at their goal, the goal in Jainism is basically liberation or moksha. Same with the Buddhism also. And the nature of the self, as in slightly different in Jainism and Buddhism. In Jainism, it talks about soul being eternal, individual soul, and purified. Whereas in Buddhism, they say is not a permanent self, just pure awareness. Then the process for reaching our goal is in Jainism is by shedding off our karma through right faith, knowledge, and conduct. And in Buddhism is by dissolution of ignorance through insight and meditation. That's the process. And what the final state of our mind, of our consciousness would be in Jainism is basically called Kevala Jnana or omniscience, or moksha. Whereas in Buddhism, it is Bodhi or Nirvana or complete awakening, or so that is how the consciousness is sort of defined in Buddhism and Jainism. So in Basavana is basically in Karnataka we have the Basavana philosophy, which is very, very prevalent, and I think this was led by, not many of you know, there were three major contributors to this particular philosophy. At top is basically Allama Prabhu. The other one is Akka Mahadevi, and the picture at the bottom is Basavanna. So these were the two sort of leaders in this, who sort of develop this particular philosophy. And here you would see, this particular sort of philosophy of Basavanna and their others, they were in the 12th century. They developed, they were all quite well versed in the Vedas as such, and that was their sort of background and the base on which they said. And based on their experience, they developed sort of 6 stages of consciousness, starting with the awakening of devotion, awakening of devotion towards a higher purpose, which they mentioned it as called the Bhakta Sthala. And as the sort of a seeker started benefiting from this, from the alignment that he had with the higher purpose, and which sort of led to the surrender of the ego through service. This is basically particularly, and that stage of consciousness was called the Maheshwara Sthala. Then again, following that was the Prasada Sthala. Then the realization of the God within the heart, right? That was the Prana Linga Sthala. And the 5th stage was basically the identification of God's will, surrendered to the stage of complete surrender. This was essentially called the Sharana Sthala. And finally, there was very similar to the Sahajmarg philosophy, with something called the non-dual awareness. It was called the Aikya Sthala. So this was the stage of consciousness as was defined by the Basavanna and others, philosophers. So looking forward to the Vedanta, basically. So I think one of this thing from the Manduka Upanishad, where where the stages of consciousness was starting from a Jagrat stage to a sleeping stage, or Shupshupsa stage, and the Turiya stage. So again, what was the dominant? I think things was sort of getting clarified out here, where the identification with the body and the external reality was basically the Jagrat phase. And identification with thoughts and imagination was something of the Swapna stage. And the deep sleep being the dominant awareness being of blissful unawareness, potential consciousness, and without awareness. And Turiya stage, the 4th stage, was pure awareness. So this was how the Manduka Upanishad basically sort of defined it. And if you look at the timeline, the Manduka was approximately around the 300 before Christ, Christian era. Okay, so coming to the later stages, this is when Adi Shankara sort of, in I think the 7th century BC, he, based on the Vedas, basically, he sort of started out of the Advaita Vedanta. So the core idea was that thing was consciousness was Chaitanyata, and his thing was his theory was there is no evolution in consciousness. Rather, it was a removal of ignorance or avidya, and how avidya could be sort of removed was through developing viveka, vairagya, and nididhyasa. That was how the process was to sort of remove the ignorance, and sort of and there was sort of an awakening. There's not something like a growth, but that was an awakening. Is how Shankara really put it. And if you look at it, put it in brief, it says Brahma alone is real. The world is an appearance, and the individual self is none other than the Brahman. So this was part of the Advaita, the non-dual philosophy of Shankara. So a couple of 100 years later, we had Ramanuja, basically called the Vishishtadvaita, the expansion through loving participation. Somebody, okay. The core idea here was consciousness is real, and the individual is real, and they are yet inseparable from God, where Narayana is basically termed as God here. The soul's jiva, the soul is the jiva, is like a cell in a divine body. So that was how Ramanuja conceptualized it. And whereas Ramanuja thought about human consciousness being expanding, he says human consciousness expands by deepening awareness of its dependence on and unity with God, while retaining its individuality through bhakti and also prapatti. And also he also talked about prapatti or surrender, which is also a sort of a thing that we also talk in our Mark philosophy. This is an expansion in love and awareness culminated in moksha. So moksha is again the final sort of a goal in the Vishishtadvaita philosophy. The more one loves the Lord, the more one's consciousness expands into his infinite being. So that is basically the summary of the Vishishtadvaita's philosophy. So we had the third one, the Madhvacharya philosophy, which was Madhvacharya was another sort of a saint in Karnataka, in the area near Udupi. So his core idea was God, Vishnu, and souls are all eternally distinct. Consciousness expand does not mean merging, but perfect realization of one's true nature and of God's infinite majesty. For Madhva, spiritual evolution means rising from ignorance to correct knowledge, or Tattva Jnana of the fivefold differences, Prapancha Veda, between God, soul, matter, and others. The soul became more luminous and consciousness as it purifies and recognizes his eternal dependence on God. So the highest expansion of awareness is a perfect discrimination and devotion to the Supreme, never identify with him. So this is essentially part of the Madhva Dvaita Siddhanta philosophy. So I think so now basically these were some of the, in brief, of what the philosophies are prevalent. I left out many of them are in India. There are many in South India that are there, which which are not dealt into. But if you are interested, I think we can also look at some parallels that we see with this philosophy that Babuji has also sort of put together. So moving forward, we will start looking at the chakras that were there in the Indian philosophy. So the chakras, you're all very familiar with all the 6 chakras. I think I'll not go into detail on that. So this was essentially sort of proposed in the Upanishads basically in the Brihadaranyaka, where they talk about nadis and prana is sort of discussed. So the concept of chakras was proposed in the tantric traditions of Shaiva Tantra and Shakta Tantra in the 7th to 10th centuries Christian era. So one of the first books on these things was written by Kujjika Matra Tantra, and later text by Shak Chakra Nirupana by Swami Purnananda in the 16th century. So this is how the concept of chakras got much more detailed out in the Indian philosophy. Okay. So again, just continuing on that thing. So this is something which I picked up from the spiritual anatomy, where Daji talks about the root chakra. The root chakra plays the role of making one feel grounded. It provides the primary support for existence and perpetuates the most fundamental need of survival. In Sanskrit, it's called the Mooladhara. Mool, primary, or main. Adhara means support. So essentially, the root chakra basically helps us to make makes us feel grounded. This next is the sacral chakra. Sacral chakra. This is the dwelling place of the lower self and responsible for procreation and sensuality. In Sanskrit, it's called the Swadhisthana. Swa means self. Adhisthana means dwelling place. And finally, the navel chakra, located in the navel area. This chakra generates the ego aspect of domination and ruling. The sense of pride and power comes from here. In Sanskrit, it's called the Manipura, whose name means the dwelling place of jewels. Mani, jewels, and Pura is city. The main, what Daji is explaining here, the main purpose of these chakras is to ensure our survival. They are reasonable for actions that deal with food, sex, power, dominance, and so on. These needs are primarily instinctive, and why these chakras are this filled with power. In heartfulness practices, the focus is on purifying the system and awakening the heart chakra first, which then leads to the activation of the higher chakras. As the system becomes purified, energy from the higher chakra flows down and nourishes these lower chakras. So I think just to sort of reiterate, I think we start off our sadhana from the heart region, start working on the higher chakras, and the higher chakras in turn would sort of help us, work on the lower chakras also. Well, that's the strategy that Babuji has adopted in our training in Sahaj Marg. Yeah, that's where our real sadhana starts. So this, as he says, as Daji says, is a cascade approach, helps in saves time by addressing multiple chakras simultaneously. Without it, one would need to observe strict discipline and austere practices to maintain the effects of power released in the lower chakras. These practices can be time-consuming and are difficult to follow. So I'll stop here for a few minutes, and if there are any questions, I know now we would gladly take. Yeah. There's a lot of information here. I think it's just for, just to sort of, because I put them here because as you become prepared, you would be meeting a lot of abhyasis from different background. Maybe a little bit of information would be helpful. Brother Raghu, you would like to add anything, or can I move on?
I think we'll just wait for any observations, any questions or clarifications.
Okay, I'll move on. There's one brother Maheshwar Hegde.
Namaste, brother. This second chakra is there, no, from down. This is a
sacral
chakra.
Swadhisthana.
Self-dwelling place means where Atma dwells, or what is that? Actually, what we read in this one, it dwells in the heart, like that we had read. But here it is written that self.
Lower self. Lower self is what is mentioned here.
So there are three selves that we use. One is lower self, second one is higher self, and the third one is the supreme self. So there are three words that we use commonly in spirituality. So the Swadhisthana chakra, Swa Adhisthana. Swa means the self. Adhisthana means that kind of stabilized there. So Swa Adhisthana, that's called as Swadhisthana chakra. So the lower self, in other words, a human being whose life is only led by the effect of these three chakras, the lower three chakras. So in other words, their entire life, they're only thinking about eating, mating, and then excretion. That's it. So their entire life is led by only these three primary things. So food, hunger, thirst, sex, and excretion. That is the reason why those people actually dwell in the Swadhisthana chakra. So when necessary, they move up to the Manipura chakra. When necessary, they go down to the Muladhara chakra. Otherwise, most of the time, they are dwelling in the Swadhisthana chakra. So they are the people who are just engrossed in the worldly life without having any higher purpose. These are the people who are called as animalistic people, animalistic persons, because they would do only things which all other animals do. They would not do anything which human beings are capable of doing. Okay, so the place of the self dwelling in these people is the Swadhisthana chakra, the lower self.
Yeah, I think today the letter that we read from Lalaji also sort of points to that. People who are who are totally selfish, right? I think maybe sort of those people will be moving around in only these chakras as such.
Ajitesh?
Yeah, the chapter that we read, knowledge from the book, Babaji talks about animate and inanimate, and he talks also about these in terms of states. So I'm not able to grasp what is the state of inanimation and how animation is the basis of inanimate. And he also talks about something where he says that we are at the middle state. We cannot perceive something that is very high and something that is very low. So I'm not able to link it properly.
We'll come back to that later on, as and when we finish the presentation. Is that okay?
Sure.
No problem. Okay, brother, you can continue.
Okay. Thank you. So let's look at the chakras basically in now greater detail. So these are Brother Raghu last time sort of also mentioned about the common traits in each chakra, and he also gave an acronym for it. I think it's states, elements, quality, interconnection, colors, movements. So these are the elements of the, rather we could say these are the part of our journey. Chakras are the milestones in our journey, which we will be talking in detail in this session and the other sessions. So starting in this chapter, Daji basically gives us a very good example of about Waldo. I think I'm not sure. So Waldo was sort of was a character that was sort of developed by a person by name Martin Hanford from UK. So he was very good at sort of driving out, sort of putting out pictures, which are very complex. Large number of people, large number of activities happening, as you would probably see in this particular picture. This is one example that is given. And the thing was basically to sort of identify Waldo in it. Where's Waldo? So this was sort of a mental exercise, right? And that was sort of given. And what Daji sort of is connecting to is something like that, since we, as you see, the traits in our chakras has so many components in them, so that, if you are able to somehow sort of get some signature, learn to get these signatures, right? We will be able to identify them. So that's the example that he gives of Waldo, and that's something we also used to do, when we are children, as to spotting differences, between two pictures, trying to sort of figure out, try to get what are the differences in the pictures and stuff. We try to help us understand or try to train our brain in a certain way to identify patterns. So this is what what Daji is trying to say. So like how the way we are trying to identify difference in these pictures, or the way we are trying to identify Waldo. So similarly, observing inner changes also can be done similarly. So this is what he's written in this particular paragraph in Spiritual Anatomy. Observing changes is much like finding Waldo, but with a big twist. You know what Waldo looks like, but in the inner landscape, we must first learn what to look for. So in this chapter, we will be doing two critical tasks. First, we need to know what we are looking for. So we will learn the common traits of the chakras, such as their elemental constitutions, colors, movement, and vibrations, locations, and emotional qualities. So that's how Daji has sort of set up this particular chapter in Spiritual Anatomy. So on the first stage or position on locations, I think we are all quite aware of it. So I'll sort of move to the next slide. So we move to the states. So state is, okay, again, what Daji basically goes back to sort of how sort of a child is born. When a soul descends into a body, it it does so like water descending from a mountain and flowing across the plains. At various points during its descent, the water forms whirls and currents. This soul too expresses and collects its energy at various locations of the body, which we call chakras. A chakra is a bud-like state. A chakra in a bud-like state is called a knot. Awakened chakra that blooming with full potential is called a lotus. The image that follows is an easy way to remember the various states of a chakra. So this is a picture that that Babuji sort of put here in this book. How a knot looks like, which is really in a bud shape, and then when it blooms, is a chakra state. When the chakra when the flower, rather the bud blooms, it sort of becomes dynamic. It is in a chakra state, and it becomes lotus when in a fully blossomed state. So one point I would like all of you to sort of observe is in spiritual anatomy, Daji talks about chakras, and Babuji in towards the end talks about knots. So I think that's sort of a connection that you would like to sort of keep in your mind when you start reading reading the books together. So when Babuji talks about knots, it is basically a sort of the chakra in a sort of a bud state, where we have sort of what I call samskara, or things that are sort of knotted the chakra as such. When we talk about spiritual anatomy, we use phrases like work on the chakra is touched, etc. But the work on the chakra does not mean we do something to open up a chakra, like we unwrap a gift. Okay, so it's not what we typically try to do. So he's asking us to sort of imagine this. Think of how we could tend to a rose plant in a garden. We make sure it has the right soil and enough water, and it is well protected from bugs. The rosebud receives the warm rays of sunlight and blossoms naturally. We take care of the plant, and the bud blossoms on its own. In the same way, when you meditate on your own, in sessions with heartfulness trainers, and in group meditation, work happens on a chakra. So this is how essentially how the nurturing of the chakras in our physical system happen, is what Daji is sort of mentioning. The field around a chakra is clean, and in the intervening spaces between the chakras are cleared. After the field is purified, impulses of transmission are given to a chakra. This allows the chakra to flower, and its energy descends into the heart, creating inner conditions. Cleaning and applying transmission is a layered process and takes place throughout the spiritual journey. Yeah, I think as this sort of paragraph mentions, it is as we go to receptors for sittings where cleaning is majorly done. Right. So those are, and also when we attend bhandaras or satsangs, Sunday satsangs, where we sort of receive transmission in abundance. That's how the chakras in our spiritual systems get worked upon and starts. So as the knots start receiving the transmission and the cleaning, the knot starts to sort of flower into a chakra and into a lotus. And that's it. So the next point we'll be talking about after the states, we'll be talking about the elements. So each chakra has elements. The elements are the 5 basic elements, the Panchabhutas as they call, the earth, space, fire, water, and air. And each chakra, as you see, this is just shown a picture of the first chakra, where we have a predominantly one predominant element in a chakra, and four other sort of elements supporting that particular chakra. So this is what you would see in all chakras up to the 11th point, where all the elements are sort of present and sort of contribute and are worked upon in each of these chakras. So the earth chakra to begin with describes solidity or stability. Then the air represents movement exhibited by a gas. Water represents the liquid state, and fire signifies the attribute of matter to transform one state to another. It's a sort of a transformation element. For example, when we heat water, it becomes steam. Or when you heat ice, it becomes water, that way. And the space is the base of all the elements. The space is the base. The fundamental material, was never created. It was always there. It represents the idea of nothingness. So this is the space element. So with this understanding, when you look up at the human body, as you all know, all these particular elements are present in our body in gross form also. And the five elements are not limited to the physical anatomy alone. They also play an important role in the spiritual anatomy, as you would probably see. All these five elements would also have subtler elements also. Subtler elements as we go into the higher regions of our spiritual system. So within each chakra, the qualities of the five elements are present, and each chakra has one prominent element. And here, Daji gives an example of clay, which has primarily the element is earth, because that's the maximum amount of content in it. It has also moisture in it. It has also, which has the water element, and it has also got a little bit of energy or heat in it, and also has water as well as got space and air also in it. So it gives an example of clay as a sort of as an example. So those are the elements that you will sort of be seeing in each of the chakras, and which will go detail as we go ahead, and its impact on it. The next is basically the conditions and quality. Okay. So this is basically, as we sort of discussed earlier, the chakra being a bud earlier, and how it basically sort of blossoms. So when a chakra blossoms, the energy bracketed inside is released gradually. We feel this energy in the form of emotional conditions created in the heart. When we nurture these inner conditions and make them a part of our nature, they express themselves as qualities in our behavior. In this way, we gradually reprogram our nature by developing the qualities that help us to grow and evolve. So as Babuji keeps constantly mentioning, right, I think every meditation, every sitting, new conditions are being sort of given to us. And those conditions, we will have to sort of nurture them initially through the AIOE process immediately after meditation, and also try to keep our condition as much as possible later on also, and build upon it. So again, in the next paragraph, expanding on the conditions and what we need to do here, he says, conditions are the steps we ascend on the path to infinity. Transmission and the Guru's work create conditions that we experience. For example, at the first chakra, we develop acceptance, and at the second chakra, we develop peacefulness, and so on. When we feel these conditions within, we work with them to imbibe them. And when we make use of the conditions by immersing ourselves in it, we grow. If not, the conditions are lost. I think again, the importance of AIOU is what Daji is sort of talking about here. Okay, the next one is the interconnection of the chakras. So Babuji talks about here as I just put out all the rest of the program here. Okay. Babuji coined a term invertendo to capture the inversions of truth that we see in nature. Invertendo shines the spotlight on the paradoxes that we observe in nature's design. For example, the lower one's humility, the higher their consciousness rises, the more emptiness one creates within, the greater the grace that descends in their heart. The more centered one becomes, the more one's consciousness travels. Babaji observed that in the spiritual anatomy, the interconnection between chakras are an example of invertendo. The heartfulness system takes advantage of the invertendo to work across the anatomy. That's why at times practitioners feel at several chakras in the same meditation. The specific work may be happening at one chakra, and echo effects are felt at the other chakras. Receptors sometimes conduct exercises to help practitioners become more sensitive to the interconnected nature of the chakras. In these sessions, they work on a single chakra for the entire group and then ask the group to share their experiences. It's common to see the participants report stronger vibrations at one chakra and milder vibrations at another chakra, indicating that the work on one chakra has ripple effects on others. As you would probably see, right, in all these chakra, the pictures that I put on the 1st, 6th, and 11th chakra. So you have all the elements that are there. We work on one element, the other elements in other chakras also start to get affected, and that interconnection is sort of formed. The next are colors. Okay. In meditation, practitioners often observe colors, especially in the earlier years of practice. For instance, when work happens on the 1st chakra, a yellow light may appear during meditation. Similarly, depending on the chakra, you might see white, pink, orange, red, and green, or bluish colors. As you will see from this picture here, the 1st chakra, the earth chakra, is yellow. The space chakra is red. The fire chakra is red. This is white. The water chakra 4 is basically black, and the air chakra is basically green. These are some colors that the abhyasis could see during their meditations. These colors can appear as gentle. These colors can appear as gentle glow, gradient, or a flash in your meditation. When moving from one chakra to another, there is often a intermingling of colors. Yeah. So here, how the colors can come into the view of the abhyasi is what Dash is also saying. It could sort of be small and then gently grow, or could pulsate, or could be gradient. So these are certain subtle things that one, some abhyasis could sort of be able to see during their meditations. Not everyone notices colors. Some individuals may observe colors, while others may be more attuned to vibrations, movements, or feelings and arise during meditation. I think this also, Daji makes it very clear. Each one has a different talent. Some of them may be having a talent for colors. Some of them may be very sensitive to vibrations, movements, sensations basically within their physical frame. So each one, depending on their whatever their strengths are, would probably sort of fine tune them and benefit from it. Ultimately, what's most important is to stay attentive to the sensations or experiences that arise during the meditations without judgment or expectations. Finally, I think what the validation is basically our experiences and the feelings that we get. Earlier in the day, we sort of discussed in Lalaji's letter. The important thing are our experiences and our feelings that happen during our meditations and elsewhere also during our general activity that we do. You could be sort of going through these experiences also, and which we could also be sort of sensitive about and note them in our sort of diary. The next one is a movement and a vibration in the chakra that you would see. Chakras basically spin around along the vertical axis like the hands of the clock. Some chakras spin clockwise while the others move in a counterclockwise direction. Then there is one chakra that is, shall we say, moody. All chakras have a direction, but it is in the first 5 chakras which form the heart region that movement is most palpable. So these are the 5 chakras. Some chakras, as you see, probably chakra 1 and 3 are clockwise. Then chakra 3 and 2 and 4, you probably see them counterclockwise. And the 5th chakra, you would probably see on basically going on 2 different directions. This is basically the 5th chakra, which I think which Daji calls it as a moody chakra. The chakras form a field, and the energy field of each person is unique. Even identical twins would not have energy fields that are alike. An echo of the energy field can be felt physically. You may feel it is gently buzzing, rotating movement at the chakra's location. Sometimes you feel other sensations like the chakra throbbing, pulsing, pinching, and even giving you a tickle. These are all types of vibrations one feels when a chakra is being worked upon. Yeah. Then these are certain other descriptions, which picture that shows all the different type of vibrations. There are times when even during routine activities like reading, working in a kitchen, or watching TV, you may feel vibrations in the chest area, the soles of your feet, the palms, or at the back of your head. Observe these signs. They point to some work that started during a prior meditation and is continuing, or in some new work that has started in your system. When you notice something like this, close your eyes gently and center yourself by connecting to the heart with love. Direct your attention to the area where the work is happening. You need to be gentle, almost like shifting a baby who fell asleep in your lap back into the bed. Tuning in when you get an inkling of work and will help you appreciate the spiritual work happening in the system. So when I was reading this, I sort of, I remembered in one of Chariji's speeches where regarding diary writing. So he shared his experience where he said that, he used to keep the diary even when he was asleep. So even when he had a dream, so he used to get up from the dream, write it down, and and put it back, and then go back to sleep. So so that was his how he sort of did his sadhana, I think, which is quite well emulating rather. So this is about chakras, movement, and vibration. So again, so see, there are certain things in this section. Daji talks about imagination versus experience. Like many times, with a lot of knowledge, you start to imagine things. Sometimes, so this is that's the flip side of it, with a lot of information that is given to us. So this is how I think in this section, Daji talks about how we could sort of reduce that uncertainty, that sort of a thing. There is a downside to this information, of course. It can trigger your imagination and you mentally create these phenomena. An effective way to keep check on mental fancies is by writing your observation in a journal and forgetting about them. Over time, when you read our journals, we will notice patterns that help us separate imagination from experience. Also, when we have a real experience, there will be no doubt about it. You will be certain of what you witnessed. So I think that's very clear. Additionally, avoid comparing experiences with those of others. Though we share the same goal, each person's journey is unique. The attitude we exhibit, the eagerness to the goal, the conditioning we carry, the environment we live in, the company we keep, and many other factors are unique to us. With such diversity inherent in our lives, comparison can only confuse us. It breeds doubt, and competition can distract us from the main goal. So this is, as I was reading this, I remembered my college days. Immediately after the exams, right, we come and start comparing our answers, and then some of them would get feel bad about it because they got the answer wrong. So I think maybe something similar experience we probably should take from there, where the journey is ours, and we need to be true to what is said in the books and what Master is guiding us. So I think that will certainly help us. So this, I think the next thing is about the stage of flowering of the chakras. So here it says, like if I ask someone how was your meditation, the most common answer I usually get is, oh, it was deep. I had many thoughts. I fell asleep, and I felt lighter. I felt relaxed, or something along those lines. Describing a meditative experience is difficult because in some ways we are trying to distill the ocean in a teacup. I think that's always find it challenging, right? That's one of the, we always sometimes fear about what the preceptor would ask us, right? What did you feel? And we had to have an answer for it. And many times we meditate on the question that would be asked. So that's a particular challenge that we all face, I think, which we had to over time try to overcome that. So the sensitivity to observe and the vocabulary to describe are both required, and they take some time to develop. So it's easiest to describe how we feel at the end of meditation. So I think Daji knows about it, that we should not meditate on the question that the preceptor would ask. And that is what. So our condition is what you feel at the end of meditation: peaceful, joyful, blissful, light, agitated, restless, content, irritable, happy, emboldened, settled, and compassionate. These conditions are gifts of your practice. Each time you sit to meditate, the bracketed energy inside the chakra is released gradually. The higher potency energy gently flows into the center of our consciousness, our heart. We feel this energy in the form of conditions in the heart. So I think this is what we should be looking for. Look for what is really happening, observe what is really happening, and sort of make a note of it mentally. And at the end of sitting, write it down and sort of convey the same if the preceptor asks us to. So you need to be vigilant in nurturing the condition. When you protect and nurture the condition, it grows into a meditative state that carries you. But if you lose the condition by, say, checking your phone immediately, I think we lose it. I think this is another sentence where it clearly talks about a condition and a state. Right? I think right at the beginning we talked about condition and states, right? So a condition is something which is given, which is in a small way, and when nurtured, that condition can become into a state which is sort of long lasting, right? So the conditions are given during meditations or at any point of time, and once we have sort of acquired it, we probably need to enliven it and also continue to do complete the AEIOE process. So when you nurture a condition, then you build on the condition and allow a newer condition to descend. A condition is something that you work in and work with, meaning you can work in a peaceful condition created after meditation and stay connected with it throughout the day. We can also work with a peaceful condition and make it grow and into harmony and joy. So these are some vectors that you will probably get, and sort of how you can sort of develop one small condition that is given to you into other, and make it much more complete within us, so that it becomes a state within us. So that is the state that you sort of get into. Okay. So again, the last, I think, journey to the source, the journey to the chakras, to the source, relies on the conditions created in the journey, which serves as a step to infinity. So again, I think this is what we need to observe, is what Daji is telling us. Conditions are given us, which will sort of lead to inspirations within us, and these inspirations will further help us to sort of change our thinking, and with a proper sort of using making use of these condition and inspirations, which will lead to feelings, which will then lead to actions, and and then into a self transformation. That this is the stage when you go from a condition to a state, to whatever state that that we need to be in, or what we ought to be in, as Daji says in the Spiritual Anatomy project. Okay, the next paragraph, he talks about the blocks in consciousness affect the creation of conditions, but the bigger factor in creating condition is the secret ingredient, is your attitude. I think somewhere in the book, I think Daji talks about a mother teacher attitude of sense of urgency, humility, and liveliness. The attitude you bring in meditation determines the attitude from which the conditions descend in your heart. Contrast an angry, irritated, and disinterested attitude with a loving, tender, and melting attitude. Which heart would the conditions then propel inner growth? I think we know that. I think how conditions are pretty important. When you nurture our conditions with right attitudes and take a keen interest in observing them, you can appreciate how the flowering of the chakras helps your consciousness evolve. You can notice the finer subtleties of inner change. For example, you can experience how the blossoming of the second chakra and later on the eighth chakra creates unique flavors of peace over time. Terms like heavy peace, very light peace, shallow peace, and drowning peace becomes part of your vocabulary. And all these conditions and many more are created as chakras flower. I think there's something where the importance of writing our diary, I think, is very important, where we have to develop our own vocabulary of what conditions we feel. And, we may be creating new sort of words, based on the feelings that we get. And that's very important as a part of our spiritual journey. Okay, stages of flowering of the chakras. So these are the 4 stages, which coexistence, nearness, identicality, and merger. So basically, a chakra basically goes through 4 stages. I'll read the text here. Now, the flowering of a chakra happens in 4 distinct stages, and in these stages, it goes being a knot to a lotus. Each stage serves a specific purpose, and once that purpose is fulfilled, the next stage commences. Much like a launch stage of a rocket. The first stage is coexistence, also called Salokita. Nearness, which is Samipyata. Identicality is Sarupyata. And merger is Sayajita. And coexistence is Salokita. There's some sort of a change in the order, about that I'll learn. So going to start from in coexistence, that's the first stage. You probably see that, I think this sort of depicted with, a current consciousness and a future consciousness, future state. In coexistence, your consciousness is raised to a level of a chakra you have arrived at. The sudden shift in consciousness can be a peculiar experience for some. It's like moving to a new country. Here, basically, as sort of new conditions are given, I think you could probably look at a new condition being given in a sitting or a satsang, and that's where you start to use the AYU to sort of bring you to some sort of a stable stage just after the meditations. So here the important thing is at the stage of the coexistence, or called the Salokita, is essentially to adjust and adapt. So this is the crucial what you call character that we need to develop within us to make best use of the new condition that is being given to us. So when you move to the next stage, in nearness or Samipyata, you enter the fringes of the new world. An uneasiness felt during coexistence calms down with the help of your practice and sittings. In the matter of days, the peculiarity and newness you experience lessen. Then you start savoring the condition. So now you start being able to appreciate the new condition that we are sort of getting into. So post that, once you are familiar with the various conditions at a chakra, you develop identicality. The word sarupya means identical in form. In identicality, your consciousness is akin to the new level. How do you come to know that the identical has become? Is basically the feeling of lightness. I think that's where you start after having savored the condition, you start that the permanency of the condition is also sort of set in here with a feeling of lightness, so that you really want to get back to that condition whenever you feel like. I think that's when it's sort of a thing that gets into it. And finally, your consciousness is now complete resonance with the higher velocity vibratory level. There are no ripples, only total uniformity. There is a feeling of oneness in which the prevailing consciousness has dissolved into a new level of consciousness. Securing the condition at a chakra is possible only through the merger of consciousness. So this merger gives security. I think that's when we are basically in complete sync or complete unity with the new condition that we have given him. So I think that's where Raji is basically talking about this whole AEIOU process over here. I think this was my last slide. So these are some things that I sort of put together, because this is some vocabulary that Babuji would be using in the description of the different chakras. And if we are used to this particular vocabulary, you will be able to understand the text much better. So this was my last slide, and I'm sort of open to questions here. Hello, brother Prakash. Yeah.
Namaste, brother.
Namaste, brother.
It is said in one of the slides, the conditions that we get during meditations, we should nurture it after meditation using AEIOU, right? And also in the same lines, it was said the conditions could be like agitation, restlessness. It could be either. So what do we mean by nurturing these conditions?
Okay, that's a very interesting point. I think those I think are emotions. What he's probably talking about, right? I think the conditions generally are of a bit of a nature, like say for instance acceptance. Those are conditions that I give it to us. A flavor of those conditions of acceptance, of peace, right? So those are basically those conditions that are sort of giving to us. Right? I think these are maybe there could also be agitations that could be happening because of the loosening of the knots, which may cause the condition that you have to sort of nurture and maintain are those condition of calmness or peace or contentment that you sort of get. I think that is what I think Taji sort of talking. Very, very interesting point, but was obviously you should not be sort of increasing your your whatever other negative conditions that are sort of mentioned over there. Yes, Nirmala sister.
Brother, see, the second knot is said to be that of space, right? Which is like peacefulness.
Okay.
And then we move to third and fourth, which are like anger, love, and all of that. I would have thought that, I mean, space is supposed to be the common, I mean, it's all prevailing and it is at a higher level. Or so I
Sister,
thought.
yeah. Can you hold this thing? We will be talking about the first knot in detail, I think, and I park this question for that moment, and we can discuss that in detail then.
Okay, thank you. Yeah.
Thank you. Yes, Anand, brother.
If you can show us just the previous slide, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So it's saying the current consciousness and the new level of consciousness, right?
Hmm.
So, and this is happening at each of the chakras, right? As it is shown. So a chakra is at a particular level of consciousness now. How do we become aware of this new level of consciousness?
Okay.
It sounds like it's the to be state or the bud state to the fully open
Yeah.
state or something, right? Yeah.
So as you saw in that, chakra is in a bud state is sort of tied up with all our samskara or whatever, they're all being tied up. So what happens is through when the transmission basically goes on to it, right? Transmission and cleaning that happens, right? But cleaning happens, those knots are loosened. Those loosened, right? And that loosening can cause some friction, maybe in terms of irritation, as brother was mentioning, right? You feel the irritation during the certain, should you maintain that? That's not but what has caused, or because of the loosening of the first knot, let us say, would rise in certain, say, let's say, contentment, right? I think that's that is the thing that we sort of has to happen. So I lost my chain of thought. Sorry, I'm sorry about. So you can repeat the question again, brother. Sorry, I think I lost it.
Okay. No, I guess, see, a particular chakra is one current level of consciousness, okay, which could be in those different stages of the chakra that you talked about, of flowering, right? Bud, slightly open and fully open, right? Okay, a lotus. So I'm at a level of consciousness now. How do I become aware of this new level of consciousness, which is the desired state?
Okay.
And then I'm also thinking maybe it happens gradually. It's not like immediately become aware of the whole thing, right? So that is my question. How do you become aware of this new level of consciousness?
Yeah.
And I think also the idea of consciousness is, it is what it is now, right? So this new level is something that I'm not able to understand.
Okay, let me see. I'll try to attempt and see how that could be answered. Let's say, for instance, let's say you're in point one. You're point one and you're transferring to point two. Now, theoretically, the thing is that say your point two is in a bud state, right? I think you're not. So really, we do not know what really peace means to us. Basically, at that level of consciousness, when a Abhyasi is at point one, he's not really aware of what he would have some understanding of peace in the first point, right? But then as he starts moving, as the second chakra gets worked upon through transmission and cleaning, so the Abhyasi basically will feel a next level of peacefulness, which then sort of comes into the consciousness of the sort of Abhyasi, which the Abhyasi will have to hook onto and sort of nurture it and grow. And then he would look at, and as Babuji was saying, right, he says greater peace, less peace, and all this stuff. Variation of peace is a spectra of peace, a spectra of love, right? Those sort of vocabulary starts, the Abhyasis will be able to sort of start getting it. So I think that is where as the flower starts, being from unaware of those level of peacefulness, the awareness starts getting in as the sort of chakra starts to flower. So I think that's what I would sort of.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you, brother. Yeah. Yes, Murthy, brother. Yeah.
I think the slide what you're showing, brother, is the ultimate in terms of how a condition is acquired and then we move on to the next stage. Very quick progress based on what Babuji achieved in the matter of 9 months or so. And that is what is clearly explained here. The effortless uh, evolution is clearly showed out here in terms of condition is given to you after meditation. The only thing what we need to do is how do we retain it till the next meditation session so that the meditation, the condition enhances in the next one. And that is the fastest growth, like a aircraft plane taking off on the runway compared to a Boeing plane which takes off very slowly. And if we go on the love surrender path of evolution, and this is very clearly shown in terms of the identicality and the merger also. It's very quick transition what is being shown out here. I think Babuji's and Daji's intentions are very clear. This one slide is, if you actually understand and practice it and experience it, that's enough. It's a very good slide.
Thank you, Brian. Yeah.
Sorry. I mean, on the same question, I'm trying to think of a metaphor which will make it easy for me to understand this, right? Let's say I'm inside a house. I'm aware of what's inside the house, right? That's my awareness. And then during meditation, let's say a condition happens, it's like opening a window. I see something more. Now I am in this current condition, but I'm also aware of possibilities. Is that a right metaphor, or is that a wrong way to think about it?
I think it's a good one. I think certainly a good one, I would say. Let's say a person who has not seen anything outside at all. Let's say there's no windows. Let's say person is in a house without any windows, let's say, for that matter. Now somebody puts a window there. Now is conscious, then he's able to see the roads, the trees outside, isn't it? So just because of the opening of the windows, now the consciousness has expanded. Maybe I think it's a good metaphor to sort of figure out as to how our consciousness basically expands, right? Right. Or for instance, let's say for instance a person with music, for instance, right? A person who is deaf, for instance, and he's probably gets a hearing back. Now he'll be able to, for him, the sound dimension itself is at another one, right? There's expansion happening in the sound direction. He'll be able to understand different sounds. Or for instance, a person who's blind, he is able to see, let us say. So again, the sight itself becomes yet another dimension for that person. So it expands. I think it's a good example. Yeah.
Thank you.
Sandhya sister, yeah.
Nothing question, brother. I just want to add Anant brother's things. So previously, Raghu brother explained the metaphor is about driving. Like if we know the driving, we will not keep thinking about driving all the time. So only when we are starting, during that we will be having that. So initially we will feel everywhere about that, but afterwards we'll be settled. So that could be the
Driving is another good example. You can say absolutely.
Thank you.
Maybe I'm not sure if Raghu brother is around, if he wants to add anything here.
I'm just listening.
Okay.
Lot of information has been shared today. So one of the things maybe I would have liked was probably shared it over 2 sessions. But a very exhaustive amount of information. So what we want is that these information which have been given both from the towards infinity and mainly from spiritual anatomy, we want you to kind of take a bit more time to assimilate it and try to incorporate it as part of your journey and practice and developing sensitivity. So that's a very, very important aspect of the learning today. Of course, we will cover all the different color, the different points and the various characters of each of the point and the conditions and other things. But until unless you get a good hang of this particular chapter on the chakras, you will probably find it difficult to grasp many subtleties that we pass through as we progress in meditation. So for every chakra, there are so many aspects that we need to be aware of. Because as we experience our meditation, we will not pick up everything from every chakra. We will pick up some things from some chakra in every session. So you need to be aware of this particular chapter is very critical. The chapter on chakra in the spiritual anatomy is a very, very critical component of your learning. So our request is please dwell on that particular chapter for some period of time. Take your time. You can probably take 1 week just on that one particular chapter. But assimilate as much as possible and then put it to use whenever you take any sitting. One thing to remember is that not everyone will be sensitive to every aspect of the chakra. It's not possible. So each one of us will be probably sensitive to some aspects of the chakra. And those aspects probably are there with us naturally. Some people are sensitive for vibrations. Some people are sensitive for movement. Some people are sensitive for colors. Some people are sensitive for feelings. So it could be any combination. Now, one of the things that we need to know is what is our strength? So when we observe ourselves, the experience that we pass through during a meditation, what is our strength? As I say, each one of us come endowed with some natural capacity in some aspects of sensitivity. Our job is to acknowledge what we have already got and then gradually work on developing other aspects of the sensitivity. That is what we should be working towards. That would be the big learning from today's presentation. Of course, even from a theoretical perspective, it's a lot of exhaustive amount of information has been presented. However, the more we actually dwell and pick up the nuances of these things that we have discussed today, the more exciting or the more wonder you will have as you progress in your spiritual journey. So, for example, when an Abhyasi comes and we recognize that they're actually very sensitive to colors, there are a lot of Abhyasis who are sensitive to colors. But as we discussed last time around and also in the first slide today, most critical factor is the feeling. So how to develop feeling? This is a very, very common question that people ask. One of the simple things is just put a suggestion to your mind that I need to develop the aspect of feelings in terms of sensitivity. So allow the thought to kind of just flourish in the subconscious mind. Over a period of time, you will actually start becoming more sensitive and aware of the feeling. The second way of doing developing that sensitivity towards the feeling is whenever there is a change in your activity, whenever you move from one place to another place, whenever there is a change in your situation, whenever you interact with anybody, just look at your heart. What does your heart say? Okay. Now, that feeling, the initial feeling, for example, many times in psychiatry, we ask the people to say, what's the first word that comes to the top of their mind? Now, that gives us a clue to actually peep into their subconscious. What is it that is hovering in their subconscious mind? The word that comes to the top of their mind is the topmost in the subconscious mind. That comes to the conscious mind as the word. Likewise, as we meditate, the topmost feelings, one which is predominant, is what we feel during the course of the meditation. But as we progress in meditation, we actually pick up multiple feelings. In other words, different feelings at different points of time during the course of the meditation. So, three exercises we would want you to do as far as developing the sensitivity towards the feelings is concerned. One is that we would want you to put that sankalpa into the subconscious mind. If you are not so very good at picking up the feelings, put that sankalpa into the subconscious mind. That's the first thing. Second thing is learn to observe with awareness and alertness during the course of the meditation session. Now, after the meditation session is over, try to answer two questions. What are all the feelings that we actually pass through during that session of meditation? How has the feelings at the level of the mind and the heart changed from the start of the meditation versus the end of the meditation? So these are the two questions that you should answer after every session of meditation. Now, whether it's your own meditation, whether it's a individual sitting, or whether it's a satsang. Now, these two questions you should fundamentally answer all the time. The last thing that you would probably do as an exercise to develop this sensitivity is that we need to keep looking at the heart whenever there is a change in the situation, change, or when we are meeting a new person, whenever we are actually in a different place. For example, you would just enter a temple, just look at the heart. What does the heart say about the condition of the temple? You enter into a hotel, just look at the heart. What is the heart saying as far as entering a hotel is concerned? You enter into a meditation or hall, what does the heart say about the condition that you feel or pick up in the heart as you enter into the meditation hall? So every time there is a change in the person that you meet, in the situation, in the activity, please develop a habit of looking at your heart and noting down the feelings. That will go a long way in developing sensitivity towards feeling. And there is a dictum that experience precedes sensitivity. So when we move to a new level of consciousness, we do not pick up the feeling straight away. When we move into a new level of consciousness, initially we feel totally lost. We don't know where we are, what is happening. However, what would happen in the next session then of meditation? You actually go back to the same level of consciousness in this next session. Then what happens? You now tend to become a bit more familiar with that level of consciousness. In the previous session, you entered a new level of consciousness, you are unfamiliar. So you feel totally lost, you have no clue what is happening. But in the next session, when you enter into the same level of consciousness, you actually recognize a feeling of familiarity. Oh, I've been here at this level. That's the second stage. Then what happens? In the third stage, you become sensitive to what is there as a feeling or what is there as a color or a vibration. So various aspects of the chakra that you become aware of. Then you actually start working on assimilating those conditions and then you actually do the AEIOU. Now just look at this. If in the first session you actually enter into a new realm of consciousness and you are totally unaware or you are lost and you are totally unfamiliar, what are you going to do AEIOU of that? Can you do any AEIOU of a condition where you feel totally lost? Definitely not. So when we learn to become more sensitive to the feelings, this tool as an AEIOU actually comes in as a bigger aid than when we actually feel in a session that we are totally lost. We are totally unaware. So the AEIOU comes in during immediately after those sessions where you actually pick up the feelings. So picking up the feelings is the heart of the journey as far as meditation is concerned in our system. The more you are able to pick up the feelings, Lalaji writes in the 44 Whispers, nobody has been able to pick up the feelings at the level of subtlety that Babuji has been able to pick up ever. No human being has been able to pick up the feelings at that level of subtlety. This is what Lalaji writes about Babuji. And then I read that sentence today that Babuji was always keen and fond in developing intelligence. Here, the intelligence of feeling in the heart, that is what he was actually fond of. And I think that is something that we need to keep in mind. This is the crux of our journey. How do we pick up the feelings in the heart? The more you pay attention to it, the more you nourish it, the more you are able to develop sensitivity, and that adds value to your entire journey. In fact, there is one instance in the spiritual anatomy later on in the book. There is a gathering of all the preceptors in some other foreign country, and there is a discussion among Charija and Daji. Among the group of the preceptors who are there, who is the one who is highly evolved, and on what basis? And Chariji asked that question to Daji, and Daji replies, some person from this particular country was the person that he picked up as the one who was evolved to a very good level in terms of. Now, how did he actually pick up? He used the apparatus of the feeling. Okay. Now, we all have enough amount of time. Why not actually work on developing this faculty of feeling? Okay. So, if at all you are going to pick up one lesson from today, that would be the importance of feeling. If we are not actually sensitive to feeling, we probably will not enjoy the journey of meditation. It is the feeling, the sensitivity to feeling that actually makes us more wonderstruck or more curious about the journey of the meditation. Okay. When we read all these things, you see, so many aspects of the chakra are presented. At times we will be at a loss to work out which among these things is it something that we can actually easily feel and easily use for our journey. Right? So this you will have a challenge of this when you become perceptive. When the abhyasis come to you, now it is your job to develop that sensitivity in them. Not all abhyasis, even during Lalaji's time, only Babuji was endowed with a good amount of sensitivity. Nobody else was having that level of sensitivity. And in fact, the thing is, Lalaji writes, when Babuji came for meditation at the age of 22, Babuji was a very complex person. This is what he writes. That when you came to me for training, you were a very, very complex person. And the only two things that I noticed in you at that time was that there was some degree of innocence in you. And in some aspects of your life, there was some amount of simplicity. But otherwise, as a whole, you were a very complex person. So Lalaji is doubtful regarding whether to actually train Babuji in the way that he actually wanted to. He had his own doubts about Babuji. Then he says, I had to check with my guru to confirm that yes, you are eligible for the higher level of training. So after conferring with his guru, Lalaji then starts training, and then he says, after my guru said yes, I started paying attention to you. Now, brother read about one particular letter from this book, right? So I just wanted to kind of write about one previous letter from the same book. And this letter is dated 13th October 1924. And like all of us, you know what Babuji complains in this letter? He complains that the Tahsildar Sahab is very angry with him. Tahsildar's assistant is also angry with him. Every senior officer in the office is angry with him. So he feels he is being insulted by everyone in the office. Okay, very, very beautiful letter. And I think this is probably useful for each one of us. This particular letter, 1924. And you know when that was? Babaji started his journey in 1922. And this letter was in 1924. So, 2 years after joining. Like a typical Abhyasi, he's complaining that everyone is against him. The whole world is against him. And Lalaji is saying, when you came, you are a complex person. Can you see? Now, why I want you to point out this particular aspect is that in certain ways, Babuji was no different from all of us. Now, we all look at Babuji after he actually became a master and then how he worked after becoming a master. But in order to really understand what he was like when he was a disciple, and then actually look at our own journey, that actually probably is a much more, what do you say, comparable study. Otherwise, it becomes very difficult. And commonly heard thing that we hear from the Abhyasi is, oh, Lalaji and Babuji came endowed even at the time of birth. We are not endowed like that. So our journey is very difficult. We don't want you to lose your heart. We don't want you to lose your confidence or courage. We want you to relate to Babuji's journey as it happened. Then you will see that he was no different in the way that we are also passing through the same journey. How many times we complain that the entire world is against us? Every time we feel that certain things are not going our way, we feel that the whole world is against us. Right? Very common. And the last point I want to make is that love, even in psychotherapy, we take love as the basic feeling. Every other feeling is nothing but a modification of love in different directions. That's all it is. So this aspect that we are talking about, that heart is primarily oozing with love, and the love is the primary feeling. Is the same whether you look at it from spiritual perspective or from psychotherapy perspective. It's both one and the same. And we had once spoken about the relationship between love and attention. We look at attention as different and love is something different. So please refer to one of the previous notes that we had discussed. What is the relationship between love and attention? And that will be highly useful in understanding how do we actually express our love. So very simple thing. When our heart is oozing with love, the first thing that we do is we make good eye contact. That's the first thing. Second thing we do is we actually give a gentle smile. Okay. And the third thing that we do is we greet. And the fourth thing that we do is we actually ask for the well-being of the other person. These are the four basic human traits that every human being will have. Make good eye contact, not very fleeting eye contact. Fleeting eye contact is like you just look at one person and then within a matter of a second or microsecond, you will remove that eye contact from that particular person. That is not going to show any amount of love. So four things: good eye contact. Second one is gentle smile on your face. Third one is greeting the person. Fourth one is asking for the well-wishing of the person. How are you? How are things going on? Now, these are the four basic things which shows that as a human being, we have some degree of love and concern towards that particular person. Now, it doesn't matter which living being that you're interacting with. It would probably be the same across all the living beings. Many times we see the dogs being brought for a walk in the morning when we go out for a walk. How do you relate to that? You relate in the same way. You make eye contact, you gently smile, you just kind of caress the dog, you pay attention, and then you try to talk to the dog, greet the dog, hello, and then you actually try to ask her, how are you doing? All these things by caressing. Now, which of these five senses that you use to actually show that aspect of love and care, that's up to you. That can vary. But these three, four primary things will not vary across the board. Are we able to do this? See, when you go and meet Daji, even if Daji pays attention to you, even for a second or two, you feel loved. Now, he did not ask you, how are you feeling? He did not ask you, he did not greet you also. He might just make eye contact for a second or two and you feel immensely loved. Now, the question is, how is it possible? The more higher you go towards the center, the more wholesome the love becomes. When the love becomes wholesome in nature, then you don't need to follow all the four. Even if you follow one of them, that is sufficient to express your love and care for that particular person. Okay, that's the reason why our way of connecting to the master is different in the way that we connect to other abhyasis and perceptors. Okay, Daji writes about it in heartfulness way. A couple who live together for years together, say 50, 60, 70 years, they don't even need to say anything to communicate with one another. Just eye contact for 1 or 2 seconds is enough for each one to catch the feeling in the heart of the other person. That is how it will be with the masters. Okay. Okay, I'll stop here. I think there is one question from Ajitesh which was not covered in the earlier session. Anything else that we kind of left out today about animation and inanimation?
It's also that that gut
Gut versus the heart.
Gut, and this is intuition. I mean, you talked about gut as to decision about right and wrong food, but we sometimes use it for any decision, not only right. Yeah.
No, food only I gave as an example. It can be used for multiple things.
Okay.
Just to make it easy for you to understand it or grasp it, I just use the context of the food. It could be anything. In fact, many times the gut feeling is used as part of the meaning of intuition. That's how it is used commonly, in a common sense meaning. So that is okay. But intuition comes only when we develop viveka. Intuition doesn't come before that. Intuition is something that we develop as we cross the fifth point. We mature at the fifth point and cross the fifth point. We develop the capacity for intuition. How is it then before that? Before that, in the heart region, the intuition will be in the form of inspiration. So we move from inspiration to intuition and then to divine wisdom. That's how we actually progress. So the intuition is like an intermediary stage. You can say that the intuition actually is there from this entire spectrum from the fifth point up to the ninth point. You have intuition. As you cross the ninth point, you are now aligned with the divine wisdom. And when you go to the center, you are aligned with the real knowledge. So you have multiple levels of actually tapping into this aspect. Okay. Veena?
Brother, when love is exhibited by us, so when I see a kid, whatever you told, it happens so very naturally. But when we see anybody, like it may not. So is this feeling that you are sharing is a reciprocal one? Like, should it happen to the other person also? Then why do we feel so happy when we see a kid uh, always?
This is very simple. The kid has no expectation. The kid is naturally in the state of love. So we feel that love and we reciprocate. As we grow into adulthood, we actually are covered with so many layers. So that natural ability to express the love in the way that we actually greet is not there. The kid is not covered with so many coverings. So that natural state of love is already there. So when we actually are with kids, we naturally express love. Now you might wonder, how is that we are expressing love? Because the kid without awareness is already established in the state of love. So when we meet with the kid, we automatically elicit or we generate that feeling of love and then we interact with the kid in a state of love only. Remember the ninth maxim. All other maxims are about we changing our behavior. The 9th maxim is about we being in a state that evokes a particular behavior in others. The kids are
Yes, brother.
naturally in that state. We are not. Now, when we say that we become kid-like or we become innocent as we progress in meditation, or what is an indication of that? It's not like you suddenly become totally ignorant. No, it is just that our ability to generate that feeling of love just by our presence becomes better and better. Like a kid. That is the innocence that we are talking about.
Yes, brother.
Okay. So, Prashant.
Yeah, brother. My question is on observing the color. So it's mentioned that this is specifically, not specifically, mostly it is for the early years of practice. So normally on sensitivity, actually, we don't lose it, right, over the years. So how is it related to the years of practice?
Okay.
Losing it, yeah.
You don't lose it. You actually become more sensitive to other aspects of sensitivity. That's all. So, colors is something that manifests when the initial work on the consciousness is occurring. As and when you go deeper into that level of consciousness or the deeper work on a particular chakra, the color aspect gradually fades away. The feeling aspect now comes to the fore. This is a very natural thing that happens with every chakra. So that is the reason when abhyasis come initially, when the different chakras are worked on, they report many different colors. But if the same work is done on an abhyasi who's there a few years down the line, they don't report much of colors. What they report is more of feelings, which the initial abhyasis are not very sensitive to. So it just gives you an indication that the nature of sensitivity also evolves as we progress in meditation. Okay.
Got it, yeah.
So that's all it is. So it's not like we are losing that sensitivity. It's just that the work is occurring at a different level where the need for knowing the color is now overridden by the feelings that you are actually being able to pick up. And as I said, feeling is a more definitive evidence that the work is occurring at a particular point than the colors. Color is like a tentative indication. Okay.
Okay.
So Pankaj.
Yeah, brother, my question is related to the 5 elements. Maybe it will be covered in next sessions, but in general, it is mentioned earth represents solidity, air represents gas, and so on and so forth. I was just trying to understand in the context of chakra how these physical attributes or qualities of these elements, like how we can connect these 5 elements with the chakras.
It will be covered extensively in the next few sessions, so not to worry. So we will keep the suspense going. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. Srinija?
Yes, brother. So I had like twofold questions, right? One is I know we talk about awareness and feelings, right, with respect to change and condition. But like for me in my personal journey, what I like more than being able to recognize the feelings after meditation, I'm only able to recognize, like, let's say after some time, the way I react to particular situations, that's actually changing, right? So I'm like, I know earlier I used to maybe react a particular way, but now I feel that I react in a different way, right? So is that associated with feelings or is that something more? That's first part of the question. Second is a bit, so I understand the importance of knowing the progress in the journey, right? It's like a motivator that you know you're doing better and things like that, right? But ultimately, let's say I know I'm in fifth point, or let's say I know I'm in sixth point, right? Even then, what from an actionable point of view, what I need to be doing is still doing more practice, right? I mean, the answer to, irrespective of which point I am at, is still that I need to do more practice and work on myself and basically follow the maxims or follow what our system is prescribing, right? So is then the only point of knowing where you are in the journey, is it just for motivation or is there something that I'm missing? So two questions.
So, in answer to the second question, what you said, just do more practice.
Yeah.
If this is the case, then there is no need to worry too much about which point you are at.
Mm.
That's not the issue. So, doing the practice is, of course, the basic requirement.
Mm. Mm.
But when you actually know about a particular point, where the work is occurring, you will actually, if you know the different possible feelings or conditions that you can get at that particular point, not only you will be quite alert and aware to pick it up if it were to occur, but
Mm.
since you know where the next part of the work is going to unfold, you will also be on the lookout to catch anything that might unfold from the next part of the journey.
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
So, in other words, it's not general practice. It's
Mm.
about being a bit more specific than general. Of course, the general
Mm.
practice is necessary. Babuji writes in one of those letters that not only I was aware of what was happening in the particular chakra, I was adjusting my system to facilitate the entry of the next condition from the next chakra where the work is due to occur.
Mm. Okay. Yeah.
So that, in fact, he writes he was doing it threefold. I don't have that letter. Maybe I'll read you that letter from next session. He was
Mm.
doing three things at the same time.
Okay.
This was all his own methodologies. Lalaji praises that many of these methods I did not teach him, he had only developed it by himself. So, at least I've told you two things. He was not only
Mm.
being aware of what was happening at a particular chakra, he was fine tuning the system. That was the second part that he was actually doing. And the third part was he was anticipating the condition to come in from the next chakra and he was prepared for that to pick it up.
Mm. Mm.
That is more specific than generally doing some practice and then waiting.
Mm. It's like receptivity will become better for the next. Yeah.
Exactly.
Understood.
So when you
Okay.
have the outlook for the next part, see, for example, when we are doing, say, college studies, first PUC, second
Mm.
PUC, we might just
Mm.
stick to what is being taught in the school or college,
Right.
that particular lesson. But if somebody who's very keen to learn, not only they look at what is going on in the class, but they actually
Correct.
start preparing ahead for the next session which is due to come. So they might look at the next chapter, they might actually try to grasp some of the things from the next chapter so that by the time they go to the class, they're already ready. And
Mm.
they
Yes.
will pick up a lot more things in the class than they would otherwise without this preparation.
Yes,
Right?
brother. Yeah. Yeah.
That's exactly what you're doing. So
Yeah.
that is
Yeah.
the
Got
answer
it.
to the second part of the question. Now
Yes.
just repeat the first part of the question.
Yeah. First question was so we talk about feelings and the fact that you need to develop awareness and sensitivity to understand that what work is happening during meditation, right? While I don't think I'm doing well on that aspect, but I can observe changes in my behavior over a period of time, right? For certain situations, there I'm able to notice, right? So is this similar to feelings or is this, yeah, I
It is
just wanted
similar
to
to feeling, it's
understand.
just that you're catching the feeling at a later state.
Okay. Okay.
This is what most of the abhyasis are endowed with.
Mm.
Rather than pick up certain things that happens during the session or immediately after the meditation, many people actually, how they perceive the changes in meditation is the change that they see in the way that they are behaving
Mm.
during the day-to-day interactions.
Mm. Yeah.
So rather than pick up the work of the meditation then and there, you're actually picking up the work of the meditation as a result of the work that is done in meditation. So that's okay. That is one level of sensitivity. Nothing wrong with that. Most people come endowed with that particular aspect.
Mm.
Now, obviously, you know that this is where you are starting. Now you know the importance of feeling. Now you have
Mm.
to work on yourself to gradually unfold this faculty of feeling within you so that you can actually start picking up these things earlier on.
Mm.
Say, for
Yeah.
example, when the work occurs at the first point. Now you are not going to feel contentment during the course of the meditation. That's not possible.
Mm. Yeah.
You will pick up the contentment later on during the course of your life,
Mm.
not during the session of meditation. So, when we are actually talking about feelings, there are some feelings that we pick up during the session of meditation, and there are other set of feelings that we actually pick up later on outside the session of meditation. So, these are two broad categories in which the feelings can be divided. Okay, so we need to know which of them we can actually pick up. For example, if I going to feel peaceful, I can feel peaceful during the session of meditation itself. But I might be able to carry that feeling of peace even after the session of meditation. Right? So that is far more easy because it's going to be during the session. But the feeling of contentment is probably more clearly felt and practiced outside the session of meditation. Say, for example, feeling of flexibility. How do you know that you're actually becoming flexible? You cannot know during the session of meditation. In the first point, you will probably know about it during outside the meditation, during the course of your life. Right? So when you read the spiritual anatomy about different conditions at different point, no, put it into these two broad categories. Where can we feel it? Can we feel it during the session? Can we feel it outside the session of meditation? Or can we feel in both? That will make it very easy for you to look at yourself on and off and pick up the feelings. Say, for example, one of the Abhyasi preceptors who comes here for sitting said that nowadays I'm seeing that earlier I used to look at spiritual work as separate and the office work as separate. So there was a very clear-cut watershed demarcation between the two. Of late, we are seeing that we are able to integrate both these work seamlessly without much difficulty. Earlier, I had the thought that it is not possible to seamlessly integrate these two. In other words, suppose you are logging into office at 10 o'clock and around 12 o'clock or 12:30, you have half an hour time. Earlier, the mind was not prepared to do any spiritual work in that half an hour time. So you would rather wait for the end of the day, finish all the office work, and then only look at doing any spiritual work. But as you progress, what happens? The time that you have half an hour in between, you are happy to do some amount of spiritual work. You might call somebody for a sitting, you might read something, you might actually ponder about something, self-reflect on something. So this aspect of integrating the spiritual piece of the work along with the office work becomes more easily possible. Now, obviously, this is not something that you're going to observe during the session of meditation. This is something that you're going to observe outside the session of meditation. Okay. So that likewise, if we learn to observe ourselves, we pick up so many things. And once you develop that aspect of awareness, it's a wonderful journey. You will enjoy the journey. Okay. But don't worry. The moment we actually start paying attention to that aspect of our journey, we will all develop it. It's not like only few people can develop. Most of the people can develop, provided they start showing interest and attention towards that particular development. Okay,
Thank you, brother.
Kishore?
Yeah, brother, I think you were sharing something for like you need to develop sensitivity into others. So, can you please elaborate more on that? Meaning, is it like
Go ahead.
like not sure fully, like I didn't get this properly. Is it like we need to involve or by lifestyle somehow? I fully do not understand that. Be more into sadhana, or what does it mean to invoke that kind of thing?
Invoke what kind of thing?
That sensitivity you said, right? You need to develop into others. So what exactly that mean?
I said we need to be established in a particular state where we can evoke certain kind of feelings in others. That is the crux of the ninth maxim. That we should lead life in such a way that we generate or we evoke the feeling of love and piety in the heart of others. Okay. Now, sensitivity towards others is in terms of two levels. Say, for example, Daji also writes about it in the spiritual anatomy. Suppose if you are very sensitive and you meet a person and your heart says this interaction with this person is not going to last long. So you will not invest so much amount of time and effort in that particular relationship. Because your heart is clearly giving a clue that this particular relationship is not going to last long. So meditation actually helps us save time. Likewise, suppose we have started a new business and your heart keeps giving you the indication that this business is not probably going to flourish with this particular person. If you are sensitive to pick up this feeling from the heart, then it's quite likely that you would not probably proceed more deeply with that particular business. You might probably want to change the business to something else. So one of the aspects of sensitivity is that it's going to save us time, effort, money, everything. Now that is one aspect of our interaction with others. How well are we gelling with others? Very simple clue I'll give you. When you look at others, how well they make eye contact with you, how much do they actually smile when they look at you, how much are they happy to greet you. You have to observe all these things. It gives a very good clue to their condition. Remember, one of the things is condition cannot be hidden. There's something called as depression that can be masked. Depression can be masked, but a spiritual condition cannot be hidden. We just need to develop an eye to catch it. That's all. If we are able to do it, how natural a person's behavior is. When a person's natural behavior is there, everything just comes straight out of their heart. Whatever the feeling. It could be sometimes anger also. It just comes straight from the heart. But if a person is not natural, you can see that graded response. I'll just give you an example. Just now it happened. While the session was going on, I was just speaking to somebody on the phone. And I used a particular word in Kannada. And that person is actually a Kannadigar. But he could not resonate with that particular word because at the top of his mind, he could not catch the essence of that particular word. Then it actually went down in his heart. It got converted into English. Then he started relating to that particular word. So, in other words, the same word is now held in two different languages with two different levels of vibration. One word at the level of the top, where it's in uh, a subtle level or a different level of consciousness. Other word, which is a translation of that word in a different language, in a different level of consciousness. They could not relate to that respond to that word I uttered in Kannada until it actually evoked the vibrations in the English language. And then they responded in the Kannada language. Can you see? All of us store different learnings in different languages at different levels of consciousness. Now we have to become sensitive. And then we were just discussing, where did you catch this word that I just now said? Then he said, not at the level that you wanted. It had to go down, get converted to another language, then I could relate to it.
Okay, sorry.
And that happens for a person in Hindi, they might be able to relate to certain words in Hindi far more easily than in other languages. Go ahead.
With sensitivity, one more thing which I feel is like it is sometimes it is good for sure, but sometimes we feel others, pain or such things also more. They impact us more, like
Correct.
destabilizes us. So
Correct.
then we have to somehow.
That's a phase that you have to pass through. So, for example, if you're totally ignorant about the world, then probably you will be least bothered about many things that is happening in the world. But that is not going to make you a better person. But if you are well informed, there will be many things that you know is happening in the world that might have an impact on you. So now you have to choose which one is better off for us. Whether to be ignorant about everything in the world or to be well informed, at the same time have a capacity to handle that information in the right way. The second aspect is the better way. Of course, sensitivity comes with some cost that you have to pay. You will become sensitive not only to the positive feelings but also to the negative feelings. And sometimes everyone has to pass through a phase where they have to learn to handle these feelings better. Okay, so it is an inevitable part of the journey that we have to undertake. There is no easy way out of it. Okay. Shruti?
Namaste, brother. Last class you had said about the sprite. Actually, what is the full form of sprite?
I
I didn't
had
get.
told about it last time. Does anybody remember that? I think quite a few people made notes of it in the past.
I didn't get it, brother.
It is separation. No,
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 that is
no,
sad.
that is sad. Yeah, that is sad. Sorry.
It's a
It
scenery.
Brother,
is
it is
Uh,
scenery,
Any
pattern,
pattern,
restless, imagination, thought,
thoughts.
and emotions.
what is the R?
R is restless.
Restless.
So when the work is occurring on the samskaras, you feel sprite. So you see sceneries, you see some patterns, you see some, you feel restlessness, you see some imagery, or you see some thoughts. You feel lots of thoughts, and you also feel lots of emotions coming to the surface when the work is occurring on the samskaras. Likewise, when the work is occurring on the consciousness or the chakras, you feel CM, CSLV. C is colors, M is movement, C is condition, S is sound, L is light, and V is vibration. Okay. Generally, when we ask you to give a feedback of a session of meditation, you'll only be telling one of these two or a combination of these two. That is all it is. It cannot be anything more. Okay.
Nature's heat and sun's heat, the difference.
Sorry?
Nature's heat and materials heat, sun's
You,
heat.
you are asking all the questions back to me only.
No, I have made few points. Is it correct or not? I don't know.
Okay, good. Go ahead then.
Nature's heat is coming from reality, and sun's heat is coming from the sun. So nature heat does not have materiality, so it is lighter. So in sun's heat, it is in nature, material is in nature, so it is heavier. So nature's heat, Babuji calls it as energy. Sun's heat is not energy. Here, nature's heat is in a latent state, and sun's heat is very apparent. Nature's heat is a promoter. Here, sun's
Of
heat
life.
is a mere warmth.
Promoter of life.
Promoter of life. Okay. So it is promoter or preserver of life, nature.
Correct.
So it is mere warmth. So
Correct.
it enables the spiritual journey in nature's heat, and here it does not enable the spiritual journey.
Good.
Thank you.
Although it is talked about in the context of sun's heat, so you have mentioned 6 differences. That is pretty good, comprehensive. But I want you to relate this spiritual heat as being there all the time. Remember one thing, the spiritual heat is which is coming from the Kshobh is there all the time equally till the time of Mahapralaya. So from the time of creation up to Mahapralaya, the spiritual heat is there. What we do in our system is we don't generate anything new. What is already in nature, the spiritual heat is already in nature, hidden in the divine currents that is coming down from the Kshobh. All that we do is that we tap into the spiritual heat and utilize it for our journey. And one of the things that we need to do is we need to decrease the material heat in the system so that we become more sensitive and accommodative of the spiritual heat. In that way, we can actually develop spiritual growth faster. Until unless you have this clear concept of 2 different heats, you will always struggle which heat am I actually working with. All the heat which is related to the body, the mind, and the samskaras are material heat. All the heat that you get from the things in nature is material heat. What you get directly from the kshobh is the spiritual heat, which is always ever present in equal measure. And when we do meditation, we learn to tap into that spiritual heat. That's what we are doing. Okay.
When we do cleaning also we use heat, no brother?
We use our heat.
Our heat.
The heat that is coming from our own attention, we use that. Imagination. So we use that heat. Because we are actually cleaning the samskaras. We don't actually connect to the source and then say that I'm going to clean myself. No, we don't do that. With whatever is available with us, we start using that particular aspect, which is our heat. Now, as you go higher and higher, obviously the spiritual heat also has a positive impact in terms of cleansing you. For example, if you read Maxim 8, Babaji talks about aligning the divine thought with the prana of the food will actually help you to cleanse your entire system across all the bodies, physical body, mental body, and the spiritual body. In other words, the food which is eaten with the thought of the divine is going to purify our entire system. So when we actually align the thought of the divine into the food, we are actually tapping into the spiritual heat. The spiritual heat actually cleanses all the samskaras from all the different levels. That's how it's a very good cure for all kinds of illnesses, whether it's physical, mental, or spiritual. So when you have people in the house who are actually ill, one of the simplest things that can be done is that you please ask them, have the plate of the food, be thankful to the Almighty that you have got the plate of the food. After that, eat in the remembrance of the Almighty. That itself has a very positive impact on the health. People in the house who are cooking for the entire family, you need to cook with the remembrance of the Lord in your mind and heart. That has a positive impact in the entire atmosphere of the house. And it also actually decreases the illness burden in the family. Okay?
Thank you. Thank you.
No problem, sister. Kishore?
Yeah, brother. So, in continuation to this, so we were discussing, right? Wherever attention goes, energy flows. So, in meditation also we are giving attention to the heart, or so per se. Is that energy what we are discussing here is also related to spiritual heat, or not?
In meditation, that's a very good question. In meditation, we start with attention. Then we gradually dwell in awareness. So rather than give any attention, you start with attention by bringing the attention of the mind on the heart. You start with that. But you do not actively continue to give attention on the heart. You just now gradually move and dwell in the realm of awareness. Then when you are in the realm of awareness, wherever the work is occurring, you pick it up from there. That's all. See, it could be anywhere. Some people, even in the first sitting, will say, I felt a vibration at the back of my head, near the 13th point, in the first sitting. How do they pick it up? If they're paying attention to the heart, how are they picking up things that is happening at the back of the head? They're actually doing the meditation properly. From attention, we move to awareness. And it's in awareness that we actually rest during the course of the meditation. So if somebody tries to be very attentive during the session of meditation or actually focus or concentrate during the session of meditation, they're not doing the meditation properly. Start with attention, dwell in awareness. That is a good session of meditation. Okay? Okay. Venkatadri brother, I think you might be tired.
I'm listening, brother.
So almost it went on for nearly 50-55 minutes. So good. We had
Okay,
a very
so-
exhaustive session today. So in fact, when I was listening, I was thinking that there's so much information. See, for people who have read it, probably it will be easy. But people who might not have read, it will be too much of information to take. So we request you to take your time. You still have time till next Tuesday. We will share the slides. So go through it bit by bit and try and assimilate as much as possible. And there are a lot of important points that came up in discussion also today. So please assimilate that also and utilize it for your journey. Okay. So we will probably end here coming up to 10:50. So thanks very much for all of your time. We will catch up again next Tuesday as usual at 8 o'clock. Okay. So that question
Thank you,
from
brother.
Aditya, we'll catch up and then answer that in the next session, because I think the questioner himself has disappeared. So not to worry. Okay, no problem. Namaste then. Good night
Thank
then.
you, brother.
Thank
Good
you.
night.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
brother.
you, brother.
Thank you.
Thank you, brother.